Kiwezi West constituency Member of Parliament, the Honorable Mwengi Mutise, has moved an 11-ground petition on the impeachment of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua of the Republic of Kenya. And among the grounds that we know as of now is that issues of corruption, undermining the executive, and also certain actions that in the view of the move of the motion do not conform to the actions of a sitting deputy president. We know that the National Assembly did vote, and unanimously you'd say, to impeach the deputy president. The motion is now on the table of the Senate, but also we know that there is a looming judicial process therein. And of course, for the lawyers out there interested, there is of course a jurisprudential matter arising, but the question remains whether this is illegal vis-a-vis a political question, because some have called it a relationship gone sour between the president and the deputy president. Well, we shall delve deeper into that. Welcome to this episode of the Youth Roundtable. I'm joined by a panel of distinguished young people. That is now my pleasure to introduce to you, and in no particular order. From the extreme left, which is your right, of course, is a gentleman all the way from the Yellow Youth Movement, and he coordinates the central region of that movement, but also that is the close affiliate to the National Resistance Movement Youth League. And the name is Martha Joseph. Ndugu, we are pleased to have you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Chidega. I am happy to be here, and I want to thank you for tremendously serving this country. As a Deputy National Coordinator, Central Region, I am so happy that I am speaking to the young people of Uganda. Thank you.
Yes, we are pleased to have you. Next to Martha is the only lady on the show. For those of you who follow this country's activism and what happens on the streets, then you've obviously seen this face before, and that is Praise Aloikin Opoloje. Praise is a lawyer in the making and also an activist of many kinds. Praise, we are pleased to have you for the first time.
I'm glad to be here for the first time on this show, and I really can't wait to dive into this conversation. And I know we have had back and forth trying to get on the show, but I'm glad that I'm finally here. But most importantly, I'm so glad to be here with Mata. I didn't know that part about him, the YYM part. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Changes my perspective. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we are pleased to have you too. Next to myself and the last panelist on the show is a gentleman by the names Ocheng. For those of you who went to university between the period of 2018-2017, you know the lion that rode all the way from Chambogo University to become guild president at the time, but also we know now is basically a political scholar, a political science scholar, and also an analyst. Ndugu, it's a pleasure.
Thank you very much to our viewers. It's a pleasure being in this show, and all to the young people out there. I would love to say that this is the best show for you to always stay tuned to, because the voice of the rising people are here. Thank you once again, comrade.
Wow, fantastic. The ground has been laid and the stage is set for us to begin. Martha, let me just begin with you. What do you know about what is happening in Kenya?
To delve deep for our viewers to understand the progeniture of the nature of the politics of Kenya, I will push you so far in 1966. There has been a fight between the president and their vice presidents, then the vice presidents, starting from Mzee Jomo Kenyatta and his deputy Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. There was a fight, a deliberate humiliation, but that culminated in Jaramogi Oginga Odinga's ambition. So it was deliberate for Mzee Jomo Kenyatta to humiliate him and of course quail his ambition of becoming a president after him. So there has been a fight. When you look at Jomo Rumbi, immediately after Mzee Oginga Odinga resigned as vice president, actually forced to resign, When you look at the reign of Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, his first deputy president, the vice president then, Mwai Kibaki, humiliated to the extent of being demoted to a minister. When you look at Dr. Josephat Karanja, Professor George Saitoti, Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi, for Mudavadi it was a bit different. He didn't have time in office. He was simply pushing at the end of the term. So when you look at Mzee Kijana Wamalwa and later Mode Awori, so in 2010, at the enactment of the 2010 Constitution, what informed the Kenyans, those that are enactors of that Constitution, they wanted to give an elevation to that position, to change of a name of deputy president. But honestly, it did not change a lot. It seemed different from vice president. And I look at Ugandans here. You know, in Kenya, there is a deputy president. There is no difference. You're all principal assistants to the principal, to the president. So a change of a name would give a different picture on a role of a vice president or deputy president. So that is what informs. You're a lawyer, and my junior sister is a lawyer. What informs constitutions is history. So what made it a logical necessity was to have a different nature of a role of a vice president or deputy president. But still, we've seen that from 2010, deputy presidents have had issues with their principles, with the president, because the deputy presidents, being in a country that were protagonists of politics, seemingly are like tribal chiefs. So you have a Rigathi Gachagua coming from Kikuyu, which is the majority. It seems, and he assumes the power from his inaxiomatic faith, that I'm simply a colleague to you. I gave you numbers. You know, democracy is a tyrant of numbers.
Actually, he said it in his address.
If it was not my numbers, he wouldn't be president. We must have equal share. So deputy presidents have not mastered their role. They act and posture as presidents. You cannot counteract a president. President making a national address on a matter of a march to parliament by the Gen Z. You saw the deputy president doing the same in a constituency in Kikuyu, counteracting the voice of the head of state. And the same voice, not in line with the position of government, but simply a personal. So that is where it all culminates from. I can give you examples that in America, those that follow American politics, you can agree with me that a vice president running mate to president in America, there is a vetting process. You're given handlers that will give you a picture of your role, even when you're more brilliant than the president. Barack Obama, entering White House, in the Senate, where he had served a single term, he was the 99th in experience, meaning that he was only senior to one person out of 100. When you read the book Game Change, he had actually thought of running in Chicago as a governor to get executive experience as he waits for Clinton 8 years. It is the majority leader in the Senate that sold to him an idea that why don't you run this time round? And he was very surprised because he knew that the entire DP leadership was behind the seeding ambition of Clinton, a lady who had even supported him running as a senator. He was very surprised. He asked him, sure, but Clinton is running. He's my boss. Will you support me? He was asking the majority leader. He responded that I will not support you. Civically, a New Yorker supports a New Yorker. Meaning Clinton, they come from New York. So I will not support you, but I will not give any endorsement to both of you. And in that book, Game Change, Obama says, for the first time, I learned that the entire DP leadership was not four square behind Clinton. 2 months from that time, he declared his candidature. He became president of the United States of America. Never did you see Joe Biden, a man who had been in tennis for 30 years, overshining his boss. You're simply a principal assistant. So in Kenya, they should borrow that kind of discipline. Dick Cheney, many of you may not know him. Dick Cheney was a deputy president to Bush Jr. In the modern political craft of American politics, Dick Cheney is miles brilliant than the Obamas. With his experience, never did he overshine his boss. So, the Kenyans, if they want to have a consistent relationship, a consistent relationship of president and deputy, they should borrow.
So did the deputy president then, William Ruto, also attempt to overshine
Absolutely.
Uhuru Kenyatta at the time?
Absolutely. The actions and responses from the president is what is different. I can tell you, to those that follow Kenyan politics, there was a tug of war. What you're saying between Rigathi and Ruto, it is an anecdote of a big story. Those that are journalists, it is an anecdote. There was a tug of war between Ruto, William Samoei Arap Ruto, and Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. But Uhuru Kenyatta did not respond in the same way Ruto has done. And that is why I credit Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Kenyan politicians are the same.
But also maybe, and I want to bring in praise, maybe also it is Uhuru was aware of the fact that Deputy President then William Ruto had sufficient control over some members of the cabinet, which I don't think is the case for Rigathi Gachagua.
That's not true.
I don't know how many cabinet secretaries are willing to put that.
Let me give you two graphic examples.
I am going to, you know, I'm willing to lose my job because of the deputy president.
President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta was simply politically strategic. I'm going to give you two graphic examples that prove to you that Ruto, if Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta wanted to do the same, would have achieved it. One, the BBI. You know that even where Ruto comes from your Sinigishu, the Eldoret North, BBI penetrated to the extent of members of parliament voting on it in support of the same. Second, all allies of Ruto in the Senate and National Assembly were censured. Professor Kivutha Kibaki, Deputy Speaker of the Senate, there was a motion in simply one day. Because now, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta had launched a formal fight. He had to see all these people, the strong positioned allies of Ruto, impeached. One, Dr. Professor Kivutha Kibaki. Second, Kipchumba Murkomen, majority leader. They were all impeached in one day. So he would have peregrinated with the same, but it was politically strategic. That if I push my opponent to that day, will it yield?
All right, good way to pose it. Praise. Let's just hear what you think about the process in Kenya.
Okay, so Mata has gone ahead, to delve very much into the history of what is. And I do not differ much from what he has said in terms of the history of what is. There's always been a sort of contestation between the deputy president and the president in Kenya. And when the 2010 constitutional amendment came in, it sought to cure some of those issues, How do they draw a balance in the power between the president and the deputy president? However, away from the history, I think what we can get from this whole impeachment saga and what I see is how the politics, not only in Kenya, but in most African states, has become sort of a business or a company sort of politics, where we have people that get into power and they start to divide state resources to their family, to their friends, to their political supporters. And now this is an example of this relationship gone sour. And it's not the first. It has existed, like he has highlighted, way before this. But we could call the current DP a scapegoat, you get? I cannot lie or pretend to know and say that this is Ruto's doing or this is Ruto directly trying to attack, you know, Gachagua at this point. Because when you look at the counts against him, the 11 counts detailed in a more than 500 pager, they have evidence that speak to the fact that he's corrupt, that speak to the fact that his character is questionable. And maybe he's being used as a scapegoat, but I will not try to pretend to know the why behind that. But this to me is just a show of how, you know, there has been no room for meritocracy, and therefore because there is no room for meritocracy in issues to do with state resources or how people are appointed, and like he has highlighted, it's more of a political game of, if I align myself, for example, with Chidega, how much more support do I get? And like they say, the DP gave Ruto a lot of support from the central region of Kenya, you understand? So now that they go into these rooms, have certain bargains of this person will take this and this person will take this, and now you're failing to deliver on the terms, you get, then what next? We are going to have these different contestations coming up. However, for me, it also speaks to the power that the Constitution of Kenya has, you get? The power that, you know, we have an ability to impeach a leader. We have the power to impeach a leader if they are not delivering on certain terms. And then in actual exercise of that, we see that it works out. Unlike in so many African states or countries where we have a lot of laws that are written on paper but cannot be actualized. And for me, it again speaks to separation of powers. Because the whole existence of the legislature and the executive and the judiciary, its strength lies in its ability to check each other, the ability to have biting teeth on each other, you get. And we could go into debating that, you know, the reasons behind whether it's political, whether it's sentimental. I've seen people pull out clips of the different legislators on the floor and saying, you know, they were being so emotional, they did not even talk about the 11 counts that they wrote about. But we cannot always say that we are going to separate emotion from politics, you know, because when people are not having food on their plate because a certain leader is embezzling from them, then it's emotional because people do not have food and people are dying at the end of the day. Sure. But when you go and read the 500 pager, does it detail, does it have evidence to the different counts that are against him? Yes, you understand. So to me, it goes back to the, you know, to the separation of powers idea, and the fact that Gachagua could be, yes, a scapegoat. He could be the man that landed on the wrong day when we have young Kenyans standing up and asking for accountability, and maybe Ruto could be feeding off their rage, you know, because most likely than not, they would support the impeachment of the DP because these are things he's actually doing in status quo. But for me, those are the things that I pick out, the separation of power that exists, but also the power that the Constitution in Kenya has, and that rule of law in its entirety. I feel like if there are any issues that are not true, the courts still stand to have their supervisory role, because this is just a quasi-judicial, you know, body. The legislature is performing that duty in those terms. So that the court, because Gachagua still has an ability to petition the decision that will come out of Senate. If they vote to impeach him, he can still petition, and you know, we go over the procedural issues. But to me, I feel like that is a small bit of the bigger
problem.
Yeah.
Wow, quite interesting. Yes, Ocheng, I know you are an ardent supporter of Baba.
Yes.
So what do you make of these processes?
Thank you very much, Comrade Kidega. One, I would love us to first look at the issue of Kenya. The issue of Kenya today is more political than actually legal, where William Ruto and the Rigathi Gachagua's government has reached and their relationship. But above all, I would also love us to look into the issue of Kenya vis-a-vis the whole Africa. We have to understand that this is affecting the cases of Kenya of tribal systems is not only affecting Kenya, but it's affecting the whole of Africa. Most of the African countries, including Uganda, faced some of these challenges immediately after independence. We had cases, for example, in Uganda where we found a certain section of the Kingdom of Buganda wanted to secede. We had the Biafran secession in areas of Nigeria.
Yeah.
We had the issue of Katanga secession in areas of Congo. But it's the same case with Kenya. There has always been the battle of ethnicity, whereby the Kikuyus, having participated a lot in the Mau Mau rebellion, they feel like they are privileged. They need to be said to thank you by the rest of the Kenyan communities. But then there is also a very big competition between the Kikuyus, the Luya communities, the Rift Valley communities where William Ruto comes from, and of course the Luo communities in Kenya. Those are having a very big battle on the issue of the national cake. Kenya has a very beautiful constitution, but the policies, the politics of Kenya are actually more tribal than legal. They don't focus at what the constitution actually says. And it's not only a matter that affects Kenya. It's not something that is only for Kenya. Even other country, the same case is very synonymous. You find that writings of the constitution is so brilliant, but when we go to the time of execution, we forget that we are our brother's keepers. We forget that we are citizens of that country. We don't judge men by their ability to execute or give a service, but rather we judge them by where they come from. That cabinet composition, we don't see where our people are. I would love to go to right from the time when Rigathi Gachagua was picked by William Ruto. There were two people behind the scene. There was Professor Kivutha Kibaki, there was Rigathi Gachagua. Professor Kivutha Kibaki, well known for being an organized lawyer, he was seen as a man who will behave with a lot of decorum, and he was not the rightful man for the job. Allow me give you better insight on this. William Ruto had a bit won the mountain region or the Kikuyu communities. Professor Kivutha Kibaki was from the mountain too. Rigathi Gachagua was from the mountain too. But they wanted a man who will fearlessly face Ruto. You know, among
Fearlessly face
will fearlessly face Uhuru.
Yeah.
You know, in Kenya there is this syndrome of the Kenyatta family, the Odinga family. There's a way they are seen. They are seen as the goddess on earth. They are seen as people unique from the rest of the people. So they wanted a person who will execute the mission fearlessly. And Rigathi qualified for being a very ruthless man who will be given the biggest sword and gun slaughter Uhuru in all the pieces that will be needed at that time. Rigathi executed his part. But above all, at that time, Ruto had a problem with the lake where the Kikuyus come from. And he learned that to rule Kenya, it's actually historical. Ruling Kenya can never be peaceful without having the Luos on government. You must bring them. If you're to study the whole analysis right from the time of Tom Mboya up to where Raila Odinga is, you must bring Luos. You leave them outside the government, you're going to face all sorts of crises. And this is something that Luos have set as a precedent.
Why though? Like, why is that the standard? Maybe like, is there something peculiar about the Luos that they do?
They are second majority.
They are not.
The numbers.
There's the issue of the numbers, but then there is also the issue of Luos feeling like since they are the founding, they still believe that Jaramogi Oginga Odinga would have been the first president of Kenya, not even Jomo Kenyatta. But he had that respect because there are lots of videos. He was invited several times in Lancaster. Yeah. He was told to be given the opportunity. But he said, no, my master is in prison. I cannot allow that. The whites told him, we can actually give you and you release him. He refused. He said, Jomo Kenyatta was our master of politics. There is none of us with a better IQ in understanding governance than him. So the Luos also feel like they are second to Kikuyus because their father was there from the beginning of the journey. Leaving that aside, I would love to go ahead to proceed and say that Ruto felt like the mountain, even with Rigathi. Rigathi is a man whose mind seems to be a little unstable. He can't trust on Rigathi for so long. He has executed, he has knocked off Uhuru Kenyatta, which was his mission. But right now, he badly needs the Kikuyu. He needs the Luos. He has formed all forms of invisible alliances with Raila Odinga, and is fronting Raila Odinga for the AU. He's supporting Raila Odinga. And the other time he was being welcomed as Jesus going to Jerusalem in the land of the Luos. And immediately such a thing happened, he appointed Luos to government. Luos who don't work with the Rigathi. And Ruto has gotten to know that he can't trust on Kikuyus for so long. He must, one or the other, forge an alliance with the Luos for the future elections. He has known that if there is need, he rather goes back to the alliance of the 2007, the coalition of the 2007, where he actually allied with Raila Odinga, and the Luos were supporting them. He feels like that is important. And in the back of his mind, he feels like even if Rigathi goes, I have Kithure Kindiki. I have people like Ichung'wah, Kimani wa Ichung'wah. I have people like Ndindi Nyoro, who will play a very big role to mobilize. Ruto, to show you that this thing is actually highly political, Ruto has dodged the Embu trip because he knows that Embu are part of the communities of the mountain. Of recent, he was supposed to have gone there for a tour, but he decided to cancel. Why? He knew the political climate, the temperatures are not right, it's hostile. So at the end of the day, he decides to dodge. To conclude it, I would love to say that the marriage of William Ruto and Rigathi was a marriage of convenience to execute certain issues. Everything about politics does not just happen as a mere coincidence, but everything in politics is well planned, well executed to determine a specific political objective. These are two couples in the same bed, but with different dreams. And today, each want to pursue different direction, and they feel like their marriage is seemingly coming to an end. And that is what is happening in Kenya.
Wow, all of you guys are so blessed with the topic, and I love it. Martha, let me come back to you. And the question is with regards to the unfoldings of the politics in the next couple of years. 2027 is not very far from now. So the ties with Rigathi have been broken. There are looming suggestions that the most likely replacement is going to be Professor Kithure Kindiki. But Kithure Kindiki, as we have all analyzed his nature and character, he is not the kind who will go door to door and mobilize.
He is a modest character.
Yes. So can Kithure Kindiki sustain, can Kithure Kindiki guarantee William Ruto a second term?
you know, Council Chidega, and my friend has given us a picture of a character of Professor Kithure Kindiki. These are modest characters in politics that you do not expect to run extreme. They are players in politics where you have counteractions that you need. And I normally tell, I have seen my young friends of National Unity Platform. You know, when they look at a character that cannot be so aggressive on a matter, they seem to have shared a bed with Muzei. Now that is wrong. History tells you that all revolutions that have been successful, they have had three players. The most famous in Africa, we shall look at apartheid. I don't want to call it apartheid. That is not English. That is Afrikaner. I see professors here call it apartheid. That is apartheid. The most successful of its nature. But look at the players. Zuma in Umukonto Wesiziwe throwing bombs. And I'm the wing of ANC. Yes. But you also had the Ahmed Katramas, the Walter Sisulu, the diplomats of that nature. But pushing, but you cannot undermine any role of the two. But after you've attained your goal, you will have to put clear
just
on the peregrination. I'm trying to...
No. Even if you just oppose it with the case here in Uganda, the bush was struggle.
Yes.
You had the likes of those who were in the bush, then you had the likes of area...
Ekategaya, honorary ranks given to them because of their role.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you needed those that would speak to the whites and seek to clean a clear face of the rebels in the bush. You would need Elia Kategaya, a profound lawyer with esteem. Amama Mbabas, etc. So they were painting a picture that our vision in the bush is clear for a better Uganda while fighting a government that was in power. So you need all players. So when you look at Kivutha Kibaki, back to the subject matter, what he can add on William Samoei Arap Ruto, the numbers are clear. Because you talked of the Embu, we have what we call game association. Gikuyu, Embu and Meru. That is greater Chikuyu. That is greater central of Kenya. If you get a person of his nature, he would have been the president. But for some reasons of what he has actually put clear, a preference was on Rigathi Gachagua by Ruto himself. But the entire team was on Kivutha Kibaki. So it can give you numbers.
But didn't Kindiki lose his MP seat?
No, he did not run.
He didn't run?
He did not run.
Yes.
He did not run in 2022.
Yes.
He did not.
So as it stands, he holds no elected position?
There is no elective position.
So is that someone who you want to bet on?
But is very, very key in the operations of the alliance. He comes from one of the biggest families within Game Association. And his record, track record, in societies where people are so civil, in Kenya, I can honestly tell you that democracy of Kenya is way ahead of Uganda. People will look at your track record that as a lawyer, a senior counsel at that stage. What have you touched on? So if you want a name that can influence numbers within, Kivutha Kibaki can give you those numbers. But also, there are other junior tax, like you've talked of Ndidi Nyoro, Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah. These are big names that if you have the three, then you can have numbers of the same, even without Rigathi Gachagua. Though, you do not have to undermine Rigathi's role. I can tell you that even where Ruto comes from Eldoret, Ruto won more by a percentage of 98% in Rigathi's constituents that he even didn't attain in his constituents. So those are numbers. So if Rigathi can take off you 3%, it is not a matter that can you simply lay down, like Mzee Mirundi used to say, lie low like an envelope. So you cannot lie low. It is not a matter that you can lie low as an envelope.
And he said that he will not resign, he will die fighting.
Yes.
So I would love to say something. Yeah, just to add up, I love the way he brought it. You try to look at something like a political pentagon, where Ruto is looking at having this gentleman who has an elite character that will not go beyond him. That is Professor Kivutha Kibaki. But then he has the young tax down here who are very battle-hardened fighters.
He's very rich.
Are you getting that? Ndidi Nyoro and Kimani Ichung'wah, who know exactly the same style of Rigathi Gachagua. Why is Rigathi Gachagua very important in the politics of the mountain? He does not appeal to the elite. He appeals to the coffee grower down here. He appeals to the mama mbogas by his sense of fashion, by his taste for life, and by even by his appearance itself. And you see that whenever he has a fight, he doesn't go to the elite communities. He holds rallies down and he explains issues to the mama mbogas, knowing that it is these mama mbogas who turned up in large numbers. Lastly, I would love to say that the gamer communities are quite very unique. I don't know which God created these people that is different from the God that created, maybe let's say, the Luo communities. These guys take oaths of secrecy. I believe the learned council will be able to talk about it, that in different interviews, including of Martha Karua, she has mentioned how at night these people would take oaths of secrecies. For example, they have of recent been opening up on why they can't vote for Luos, because there was an oath of secrecy that was told to them that should you allow uncircumcised brain to rule you, you are a finished person. So it is biased upon their mind. The issue of Baba, you find that it is just on circumcision and not a big deal. So I would love to say that Luos don't circumcise, and that's a fact. So I would love to say that to William Ruto, even if he's to change the system, he will face it so hard, because there's a way Kikuyus are, and there's a way they see Rigathi Gachagua. They see him as a new prophet who is going to fight for the ordinary man down. So it will take him time, and that is why he's calculating that even if I'm to get a divided vote, can I get loyalty from the leg? That is his calculation. By me pushing Raila Odinga to the AU position, can I form an alliance with the Luos that no one is contesting? And that's why you see today some Luo groups like Babu Wino have already seen the future, and they are no longer in the same position with Raila Odinga, though they are in the ODM. But you find that they are trying to push their own independent ideas. Why? They have seen the future. The politics of Kenya is like chess.
Okay, they are in a strategic
It is strategy. You don't take it immediately. You see the governor of the governor of Kisumu hugging and greeting Ruto. Get to know that that's a signal. You see James Orengo greeting Ruto. Gladys Wanga, who would have known, and is very happy. Milo Diambo, remembering the days they studied with Ruto in the university, how they were together in Scripture Union. How come the time when Ruto was contesting, those facts were not brought? There is something behind it. So at the end of the day, people like the young tax from Luoland want to escape that. So the alliance is coming here. Can Luos give support to Ruto? Even if Ruto is to get maybe 45%
of the Kikuyu community,
is he assured of Western Kenya? Is he assured of the land of Wetangula and Mudavadi? That is the current political calculation in the land.
And in limit to add, to make an addition on his disquisition, I am going to summarize and give a brief from a show of Professor Piero Olumumba. On that very day, when Rigathi Gachagua made a press conference, I will not call it address of a nation. No. Yeah. So, Professor was on a show. It actually took time to about 12 in the night. And he made a reference to what is happening to Rigathi Gachagua, that is in a less than ideal situation. I will fight, nothing to lose now. He made a reference to a book. Those of you that are fans of William Shakespeare, The Tragedy of Macbeth. General Macbeth, in his quest to have power, he killed people. Now, his wife told him that we must be circumspect on where we think we can stop. And he made this statement in that very play. It is actually a play, not a book. That I'm not going to do a paraphrasing as a professor did, but he was making a reference to a situation of Gachagua. He said, General Macbeth said that, I am in blood. Stepped in so far that should I wed no more, returning were as tedious as Goa. Now, you may not understand that English. That is the traditional English of William Shakespeare. That I am in blood. Stepped in so far that should I wed no more, returning were as tedious as Goa. That, let me kill.
I've already gone in so deep with
absolutely.
this situation.
I cannot have a turn of a face. So that is a brief.
So Gachagua has put in so much money.
Absolutely.
He has put in so much time.
Nothing to lose
He has
now.
fought so much to have himself be deputy president.
Absolutely.
So asking him to resign and to,
If there is a pass
go
in the
home.
Senate of an impeachment, meaning that you're retiring him early, he's 59 years. If there is an impeachment pass in the Senate, he will not contest in any position in the next 10 years. You're retiring him. So a person of that nature, that is why even in war, those that have done law, in international customary laws that give a line in wars, even when you're fighting hard your opponent, you must create a humanitarian corridor. If they feel tired, they go. But if you push someone to the wall, you make them terrorists. And when you heard him speak on a press conference, he said that there are many things that I am yet to speak about. Meaning it is simply a start of a fight. It will be so deep, we do not know where it is going to go as far.
True. But also, if you're meticulous, then you would have noticed that his message was speaking to the mountain people. Like you said, he is now saying that, okay, these guys want me out, but can I mobilize the mountain? Can I mobilize the Kikuyu community to at least be my foundation? Because his press conference was speaking about what should have come to the Kikuyu community, and could see he was very intentional about mobilizing a given group of people. So do you think that Ruto is going to have an uphill task to get the mountain in the next general election?
You know,
because if you have a subversive force as powerful as Rigathi Gachagua, then the Ndidi Nyoros and the rest could easily be overpowered. I don't know what you think.
in politics, I am going to use a very technical word. So those that are good at English, please don't visit your dictionaries. This is a technical statement. Lying on a tree. When you look at his press conference, he was simply appealing to the people. He actually put a matter before court of public opinion. That please, I know where I'm going, because you have a press conference before. Tomorrow you have a Senate. He would have waited until the Senate sitting. You appear.
That's true.
But it was strategic. That whereas I know I am going to, National Assembly. There is no fairness, there is no justice I'm going to be served there. But I should appeal to the people where I come from.
That's true.
That is why he speaks. He goes so deep in a relationship to matters that he wouldn't have brought in public. That please make a decision. In Uganda here, there is a common word, koti y'abantu. Let people judge. But I know it will cost, there is a cut of support that Ruto will get from, of course, Mount Kenya. That is absolute. It is not even subject to moot. You will have numbers. But can you have at least a team that can counteract? People who can mobilize. He has talked of Ndidi Nyoro, very young, 38 years or 9. But he's rich as Rigathi.
I think he is the chair of the budget committee as well.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
he is
So he has
rich
access
at
to
38 years. Is one of those in game association that counteract power when it comes to money. So if you can use him, the costs, the power of money Rigathi Gachagua injected in Ruto, you expect it from Ndidi. You can still have it. He can appeal to the younger people. He still appeals to the wananchi Mamamboga group.
So Rigathi Gachagua is disposable in your...
Absolutely he is.
Okay, we are due for a short commercial break. Praise, I'll give you sufficient time after the break.
Yeah.
Let's take a short commercial break and see you right after this.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
We'll be back from that short commercial break. We'll just begin from where we stopped. Praise. The judiciary is supposed to be the last line of defense for really anyone. Do we see the judiciary, eventually when Senate makes its decision, do we see the judiciary of Kenya, well knowing its track record, what it has done in presidential elections, do we see them being impartial and, maybe giving Gachagua some sort of hope?
Sort of hope. So I want to think, like you say, like all of us have sort of agreed here, I want to believe that Kenya is a better democracy than what most African democracies are. And in that contestation of, democratic countries, we could put it somewhere, you get.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to the independence of the courts of law in relation to, for example, the former election petitions that happened, that everyone was unsatisfied with, at the end of the day, saying that the decision that they came up with was not impartial. I wouldn't expect anything different from this. Not that it would be impartial, but I think like heavily in terms of what, for example, Cheng said here, that the only issue that we think we could look at is the issue of participation. What was the public participation like in this entire process? There is a survey that was carried out by TIFA, and around 41% of the Kenyans were agreeing that yes, this was not a government kind of survey, it was just an individual running, And 41% of the Kenyans were like, totally, this impeachment is right, let it go forward, let it happen. But I want us to read into the current climate in Kenya. What is the current political climate in Kenya? And in that sense, I do not mean all these complex, political issues that my colleagues here have been raising, but particularly the agency of the people in terms of Article 1 of the Kenyan Constitution, where power actually belongs to them. Young people that we have seen in the recent 2 to 3 years are rising up, when it came to issues that pertained to, constitutionalism, legislation, people that have had the 2010 saga where we see a whole constitution being amended, keeping that in mind. The decision that the courts come up with, especially, for example, after Gachagua decides to petition, mostly, I cannot say I can determine what it will be. It could be impartial or not impartial. It could be different. But my question then is, what will the reaction of the Kenyans be to whatever decision that comes out? Especially at a point where we see Kenyans are not totally saying we are behind this guy or totally disagreeing with his impeachment. At a place where most people's sentiments are, since this government has failed us totally, let them eat themselves up, and for us, we shall be here for the party to enjoy what it looks like at the end of the day. And this awakening that is happening, not only in Kenya, but throughout the continent, of different African young people coming up and standing and not allowing politics to be what my brothers, mentioned here. Those secret, please, agreements and arrangements made by a certain few people to decide what the country looks like. And that's sadly what I've been picking here, which is a reality, which is what it is, that there are certain select few people that sort of sit back and decide, okay, how is a country going to run? And then they choose to run it on those lines. And then everyone else in the country just becomes sort of like pawns. You sort of fit into that story somewhere along the way. And that takes me now to, in spite of what the court decides, basing on the counts that are against this guy, which are factual, which are evidence-based, you get, what are Kenyans going to do? Are they going to continue allowing to be these pawns in this sort of movie-like scenario, political game, or are they going to stand up and rise up like they've done in the finance bill saga, like they did in 2010, and so on and so on, Because to me, this is a whole question of awakening. For so long, especially post-independence, how these white people did it in different African countries, Uganda itself inclusive, is they handed power to a few people up to now who have gone ahead to run it, like I said earlier, as a company. They have gone ahead to run it with their interests first, and not even the interests of the people at large. And the question then becomes, as other citizens who did not sit in those boardrooms, on those tables, and get some sort of that power, then how do we again fight to regain this agency, to decide that issues that are discussed by certain people do not end there? We have a say in them, we have a stake in them. And to me, that is what creates a democracy, And this situation could continue this far, where when we sit to talk politics, we do not actually talk politics. I'm going to juxtapose with America. Yes, I believe that in political systems, there are certain issues that will happen behind doors, behind closed doors, and, there are discussions that could be had there that people of the day-to-day people do not get to interact with. But the question is, to what extent does that now become more of a dictatorship than a democracy? You get the participation of the people. To what extent does that become? And unless people, for example, in the States, when, for example, people are running for political positions, people visit the character of individuals. They are going to go search your character. How do you treat your family? How do you treat the people in your neighborhood? And therefore draw a bigger picture of how you could treat the state, you get? And, most times in African politics, though we borrow, we mirror a lot from those people, but we do not take it completely. We think that when people start to have conversations, for example, Mata here, this is how he treats his wife, or this is how he treats his children, or this is what he did the other day to a friend, we are emotionalizing what politics are. But it's not different. It's not different from that. And you find that there, people a lot base their politics around that, people's characters. And in this case, we have Gachagua, and we are questioning his character, but also his different issues like corruption, etc., etc., And I think we need to start having a conversation about the character of people and their political positions that they hold inherently at the end of the day. Because I cannot be bad to my family, to my friends, to people in my community that I relate with, and then all of a sudden go and be this perfect leader in the state picture. And we need to separate that and know that this is not just what they call it, character assassination kind of politics. Because even what Gachagua himself is trying to do is to assassinate the people that are trying to pull him down. Now, for us, our part to play as, I'm speaking as a Kenyan, for us, our part to play as Kenyans, the day-to-day Gen Z Kenyans who are not part of those interesting political games, is to decide which agenda fits within our agenda that we shall support. If you're having Gachagua here, who has who evidently has been corrupt, who evidently even in his speech as he's trying to fight on, says, I'll expose everyone, like I will not go down alone, you get?
Yeah.
I'm going to go down with everyone. This shows us that he's not on our side as people, you get?
But why are you selectively looking
Yeah.
at his speech? Because in his speech, he tells
Yeah.
you how he acquired each and every single of these properties. Why are you prejudicial to him? Why do you assume that the motion against him is absolutely right and his defense is wrong? Because he tells you that he acquired this property from his late brother, he tells you how he acquired it. So then what happens to natural justice? Why are we condemning him already, even before he has been found guilty?
Okay, so you posed to me that question, but I'll pose to you the same question. You get? In terms of the National Assembly. If by that majority of a vote, unless you can prove to me that, you know, they had corridor conversations and they said, let's all outvote this guy, let's sort of concoct this evidence that is in those 500-pager, you know, what they call them? Allegations against him, yes? If you say they are concocted, if you can prove to me that they are not right, and that the majority of the National Assembly had a corridor conversation, then maybe I would say that because I rely on them, I rely on the decision that they have taken to say that indeed there is a questionability around his resource allocation. There is a questionability, things that may not be able to, you know, that are not subject to debate, though we have, of course, the, you know, natural justice, fair hearing. Some of these things are just technicalities. And yet when you point them out, you can actually see, for example, if we use our president today, and we say the president, for example, arbitrarily arrests people, people have been shot and killed, the technicality part of it is he's innocent till he's proven guilty. But that has happened, you know. People have gone on the streets peacefully protesting, they've been shot, but we have that natural justice thing. So I'm trying to put that aside, the technicalities of it, and then the factual parts of it.
So meaning you've put the members of the National Assembly of Kenya in what Professor PLO Lumumba described as they passed the reasonable man test.
Yeah,
that they, with their stature, they can, you know, address their minds to the evidence and make a decision as a reasonable person without any undue influence.
There could be influence. But they are reasonable men.
Yeah.
Yes, and unless that is disputed by anyone here.
Okay.
Supplement?
Yes.
I'll give you
it's okay.
some more time. Yeah.
Yes, I would love to categorically put certain statements very clear. The first thing is, let's look at the responsibility of the court. The court is a temple of justice of every state.
So we hope.
The court is there to set the state systems right, not to destroy. The court is there to supervise that all the arms of government are following the constitution to the latter, and that is part of the cardinal responsibility of the court. I would love to say that Gachagua going to the court is a nice idea, but however, to me, I would think that this gentleman would be putting all his ideas on how to appeal to the Senate, to be in his favor, to rule with a lot of kindness in his favor. Because if the court goes and reviews that all the processes that were followed as per the constitution were absolutely right, then Gachagua has no deal at the end of the day. He will threaten, he will throw all sorts of tantrum, but at the end of the day, he will be a man that has been disposed of.
So you're saying he should fight the war politically?
He should fight the war politically, and he should actually go and appeal to the Senate. Gachagua also presented himself. I could say his statement was synonymous to a lady in France in the 1789 revolution, a gentleman called, a lady called Marie Antoinette. Where she mentioned statements that would anger both angry and hungry mob, with a statement like, go and try cakes if you feel bread is actually very expensive. Gachagua on a day before the National Assembly sits, this gentleman calls the National Assembly the concert of the absurd. You know, these are men who are actually...
Whose fate?
Who holds your fate?
They are holding your fate. You are going to the cross, and they have the nails. And a night before, you tell them, I don't fear you. After all, you are the counsel of the absurd.
And in politics, we say an absurdity is not a handicap.
Yes. So at the end of the day, I feel whoever advised, if Gachagua has one of the strongest lead counsel who is giving him legal guidance, it was not appropriate for him to have that televised State of the Nation address a day before he was taken to the Hall of Mirrors, where he was supposed to be finished. His story is much, much similar to the story of, one would say, a night of the long knife. If you recall a story of the 1934, Hitler trying to deal with his opposition in Germany. If you could read it much better, it is very, very similar. The National Assembly were at a mood of biasness, emotions, by his descriptions a night before. This gentleman looked like the Germans being presented to the Hall of Mirrors after their failures in the World War I, when George Clemenceau, the French Prime Minister by then, bringing such people to a point, to a hall full of emotions. Full of emotions. But some of these emotions were contributed to by his statements. But lastly, some of his statements were not actually as a result of the press conference, but there were certain statements that he had mentioned earlier. Let's say, I would quote it in Swahili, where he says that, pale State House, nitaweka mtego kila mahali, hakuna mahali Raila atapita. A statement that shows that in the State House, I'll put traps in all corners, that Raila will not pass. People like Amolo Otiende, who are actually very strong supporters of Raila Odinga, when they get a chance to deal with you, they actually thank their God and say, oh God, what a wonderful opportunity to deal with the enemy of long time. So I feel he laid lots of traps for himself for a very long period of time. And this was a time that he needed mercy from the people that for a long period of time he had stepped on.
And instead he gave them more...
And instead he gave them more reasons to deal with him. So I would love to conclude by saying that let Gachagua
focus on the political...
Focus on the political ways of solving his case and go and appeal to the Senate. Much better. Thank you.
Okay. So what I think what I get from OO's submission here is he does not say that Gachagua could be found innocent even though he went down that road. As it is for many political people in just African countries, you get? They keep, it's a murky ground there. And that is a fact. And of course, the resolve he gives him is, play the politics of it all. Yeah. But I'm asking myself in my head, so who are the scapegoats when he plays the politics of it all? It goes back to the ordinary day-to-day Kenyan. And for so long, like we have mentioned here, Kenya has been that kind of political state that runs a lot on tribal sentiments. Like Chidega will go do something that is, not right, but because, we come from the same land, I'm most likely going to, let him go through. And that conversation takes us back to that place. For how long? For how long will that be the kind of politics in Kenya where people can sort of politically amend for their wrongs just on tribal lines at the end of the day? And this discussion, for much of its part in the first segment, has been around, the politics of it, or the political players in it, how they can protect, consolidate their power. And it has sort of evaded the actual day-to-day Ugandan who is, you know, not a player, but I think the ball that is kicked up and down on this playground at the end of the day. And for me, I feel like my contribution to this discussion is going to be around that. You get? How do we awaken ourselves, not just as Kenyans, but as Africans, as Ugandans, as, you know, Rwandans or whoever? How do we awaken ourselves to change this narrative of what these politics are in our states? Because clearly they are not working for us. They are working for a few people who are amassing weight at the end of the day, who are legislating around these issues. And there's like this whole inflation of, you know, what I read from all the statements that have been made by my colleagues here is that the people within the power are so hungry to amass their own wealth, to secure their own sort of like futures, financial aspirations and something of the sort. And it's sad, but that's the fact of what it is, you get? And when we speak politics in Africa, that's what we talk of, you get? How do you consolidate your power, not for the interest of the people? But to me, that is more of archaic politics. The politics that people played in France, that people played in Europe ways before, in the times of the Napoleon Bonapartes, in the times of the Hitlers, and in a more progressive world where we are having conversations about agency of the people, having conversations about human rights, having conversations about participation. Don't you think it's time for us as African states to step up? You get? We quote so much, you know, those times, those revolutions, but what we need to understand is that even though that's what politics are, that's like there's a thread of what politics looks like. But there's also a whole context to these things. As you're trying to quote and, you know, align your situation in Kenya, in Uganda, to a time in 1780 something, realize that we are now in 2024 with more progressive democracies. And how do we shift our masses, our people, our politics to a more progressive kind of approach? Now, I know that it cannot be a leap. You know, it cannot be a leap. And for me, I think it's only fair that when we have these discussions, we have them from a people-centered approach, from a people perspective. Okay, after we have drawn all those games that are played, the whole of mirrors, the everything, then how does where do we factor in? Yes, where do we factor in the Mama Mboga, the day-to-day Kenyan who is going to be affected by the finance bill, who is affected by these politics at the end of the day? And this takes me to the sad reality of very intelligent men and women currently, young intelligent men and women, some who aspire to take up political positions. And I'm going to use a situation that we have in Uganda, the NRM situation, you know. And people are going to say, no, you see, the president is very intelligent. Yes, true, he is very intelligent. And you're going to ask, why are you saying the president is intelligent? Oh, he has managed to consolidate his power. You see how he treated these people here. Oh, he did this there. Oh, he did that there. And what you're hearing more is a trickerous conversation, like someone describing a man from how he has managed to do bad things in a more clever way. And it's admirable. It's admirable when you're talking, when you're narrating it as a story. It's admirable when you're quoting it, writing it in a book. But is it admirable when, for example, you look at the families of people whose brothers, sisters, mothers have been disappeared, people whose siblings have been shot? If you look at, for example, the young people deep down in Karamoja whose iron sheets were stolen from them, and then the president comes up and says, Anita cannot resign. The next day is taking photos with her as young people are marching on the streets saying she should resign at the end of the day. You understand what I mean? So we need to, for once, just step back and, you know, stop fantasizing about empowering or entrenching unconstitutionalism. Because for me, that's what this conversation has been like. You get? Okay, there is this unconstitutional way things are being done, but okay, let us entrench them in a better way or in a more clever way. You understand? And for me, that is a problem that I see, and that is an issue that I struggle to grapple with. You know, despite, you know, how much read I am or how much I'm learned, I struggle. I try so much to always calm down and have a conversation. Like if someone listens to us talk here, an everyday person, are they going to relate with what we are talking to? Are they going to go away hating the system more? Or are they going to go away feeling like they have a part to play in making the system better for them? And when we look at this whole Kenyan scenario, for me, I still go back to what I said in my first submission. This whole Gachagua thing, he's an accident, you get? Maybe Ruto has an issue with him, maybe whoever has an issue with him, but it's an accident, which us as lay citizens should pick up on. to build a place where we choose that we are no longer going to be pawns in this whole big, I don't know, interesting book of politics. Yeah. This whole game of cards you get. And we could support, maybe if Ruto has issues with Gachagua, if Kenyans rally behind and say this man has been corrupt, this man's character is questionable, this man has stolen this much, and they say, okay, we are going to support his impeachment, you know, it could benefit Ruto because maybe that's what he wants. It could benefit the people that want him to go there. But the bigger picture is it benefits us who are trying to create a better governance, who are trying to create a better democracy. And I feel like as these people play their politics, we ask ourselves as people, which politics are we playing also as people, you know, who are not in those high game politics? Yeah. And I'll relate that to a conversation, especially that has been attributed to the March to Parliament people. Oh, these people are foreign funded. Oh, these people are receiving money from here. But just like you mentioned, the president himself was using the areas to posture very well before the white man and justify why a war was happening somewhere, why people were being killed, why people were being pushed away from where they stay. So that is what the politics are. So the question is not going to always be, you know, running on how do we fit within this grand politics of people that have sort of for so long enriched themselves. When he makes his submission, they are drawing us to tribes, they're drawing us back to when Kenya received its independence. And I sort of see that, okay, so are we trying to say because certain people at a certain time fought for independence, then their whole family should sort of rule over certain families or certain tribes just because they partook in a certain action that led to a certain independence or something. And that political rewarding that we all go for, like how do I reward myself because I partook in this? We have been in the bush, we have been doing this, we fought for this, we're on the front of this. It has taken away the whole idea of sacrifice. And we entrench it every day in fantasizing and romanticizing that bullshit of politics, you get? Like, oh, this tribe is doing this, or this will do this. And yes, that is what it pragmatically looks like. But how does it feed into the grand scheme of the day-to-day person and their contribution to this? So I know this has sort of shifted the entire conversation, but personally, me, those are my personal views.
Fair enough. I think you make the point very clear.
That's true.
And, you know, with the enthusiasm and you know, the energy, I think you drive the point home.
Yeah.
And the point for me that I pick is, you know, all this should be people-centered.
That's true.
Like, as the Gachaguas are doing A, B, C, D, what's the fate of the people?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Martha, I want to bring you in on this point, but still going back to our conversation on Gachagua is that why Kibaki survived under Arap Moi. William Ruto survived under Uhuru Kenyatta. Will Rigathi Gachagua survive under William Ruto? And if he's true, what do you think he should do?
Thank you. And when I listen to my sister, she speaks with that charisma.
Yeah.
She seems to be a Gatamerata of our time. A young Turk. And since we are discussing Kenya, please read the life of Senior Counsel Martha Karua. I think that will help you pick from the best, at least ladies of this continent. Yeah. So the survival, honestly, I do not think Rigathi Gachagua, where we've reached the peregrination of their fight, he can survive. But there are other options that he can seek for him to still have a relevant, vociferous voice within Kenya, to be a strong political player. And in Kenya, if you follow their politics, all people who have passed, who have been frustrated and humiliated in the nature of the same, have eventually become very powerful. Ruto is entirely a product of a frustration from his boss. This is starting from way back. Raila Amolo Odinga. In the picture of Kenyan politics, Giramogi Oginga Odinga had not prepared Raila Amolo Odinga as his successor politically, as a speaker of the rule. Not at all. It was his senior brother. that he had prepared to succeed him. Giramugo Odinga. It was eventually when Raila Amolo Odinga Baba came back and took space, and eventually became a key player in the rural politics, and of course to what he has become today. So I can tell you that whatever will come out of this, Gachagua will have a win, like it or not. But surviving,
even if he is impeached,
yes,
eventually?
yes, because there is that sympathy. I have told you that Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and Ruto fought. Never did you see Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta peregrinate in this very manner. So there are very many of those that will say, but you wouldn't have reached this far. You would have been circumspect on how to handle a matter of disagreement between the two. So there is sympathy, like it or not, that Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta also had numbers to do the same. But a man who gave you numbers, you reached to the extent of impeaching him, you would have let him be. You can cut on the budget of his office. You make him irrelevant. You saw the frustration William Ruto passed through, to the extent that at national events, he's not invited. A deputy president is not invited on Independence Day. So it drives his car, not invited. You get? Muzai Moi passes on. A deputy president.
Maybe that is where Ruto has learned that if you don't deal with someone completely, then
there's always a place for them to bad up.
So now Ruto is saying, I want to deal with this one here completely and just.
But you, Ruto, you need the second term.
Are
you sure of where it will end? Because someone tells you, I'm simply starting. And the Kenyan politicians are the same. That on Rigathi Gachagua. You ask yourself, before Ruto became a deputy president, do you know how many times he has been in court? He arraigned before court because of the allegations on Rigathi Gachagua? They are the same. So where will it end? Because you need a second term. If you were in your last, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta did that because he was in his last term. He would never be president again. What if you collapse as a president? What if there is much in the box that is going to be put on the table? And it will affect you. Even the Kalenjins cannot welcome you again. So you must be careful that if I am fighting, to which extent, that is why even in war, even when you're defeating, today Ebola is fighting with Israel, but the embassies are open, we speak. But you cannot hit. You even close the doors of where your opponent, your enemy would pass to run away. Because at the end of the day, if I have a bomb, we shall die together. So, Ruto must be very strategic on how far he goes with this battle.
Actually, I read from the Kenyan Times that I think prior to Gachagua going to the National Assembly, he received a phone call from President Ruto. And the phone call apparently lasted 38 seconds. So whatever was said to Gachagua, only God knows.
But I would also, for the purposes of this this discussion, I want to delve a little into what my sister has talked about.
Please.
That, and our leaders, let's try to create systems that are very fair. You see, what has made people terrorists is that they don't have hope. This is what my sister was talking about. Systems should be fair. When our parents were moving to school, those days of 60s and 50s and 70s, each and every region at least had a school where someone would go, regardless of how remote you were coming. That in North you had the Raibi, St. Joseph's College Raibi. In Masaka you had Chitovu. Here you had Chisubi, you had the Budo, you had the Teso College Ariot. You understand? In Usoga you had the Muiri. So today it is hard. It is hard for someone to come from Chana Mukaka and peregrinate through to King's College Budo. It is very hard. And this, I am going to make a reference to a book by Thomas Friedman, The World is Flat. He gives an example. He asks himself, Why is it that Pakistanis are terrorists and Indians are not? And yet they share the same history. Entirely the same history and origin. The difference is because the other are Hindus and these are Arabs. But why are Pakistanis terrorists and Hindus not? The difference is one. In India, there is a fair system. Even someone from the humblest of origin can thrive through and become Narendra Modi. In Pakistan, you cannot. You cannot come from China, where you come from, and you peregrinate to become a president. Systems are entirely not fair. And it gives a very graphic example that is anyone can look at. That if a parent is escorting a child to school in India, and a car splashes, if unfortunately splashes water over them, what a parent will tell their child is that please study hard, you will buy the same car, because the systems are fair. They have hope. That regardless of where you come from, you will become this person. But in Pakistan, the parent will tell a child, you see, those are the problems of this country. Your only dream is to die with them. Yes. It is a graphic example. So someone grows with an ambition of dying with the Council Chidega. So that is why Pakistan has more terrorists than India. Hope. So as you create a system, even in Kenya, it is a power struggle of a share. In the 2010 Constitution, there was a provision of a creation of National Integration Committee. Do you know the reason? Even when you discuss tribes, money is essentially selfish. So they understood that the issue of tribes is the key. I will wish better Baganda, that is a fact. Than actually I tell you the truth. So what can we do? We should create a commission, National Integration Commission, that will even share amongst jobs, tribes, depending on a number.
Which is the equal
opportunities
here in Uganda. Yeah.
Absolutely. But not operational as the other. Not operational. You know, we have issues of copying at best. Someone goes to a country, your lawyer, this is a private member's bill, borrows a bill. So he brings it here, he changes words Uganda.
Okay, let's take something from...
Yeah, I would love to actually be in the same position of sharing some bit of knowledge with my colleagues. Having discussed all this, we go back to we, the young people. What are some of the lessons and what are some of the things that we can take back home? Firstly, I would start with the Constitution. I would love to say that amidst the political crisis in Kenya, I love the fact that they have confidence in their constitution. That anyone believes that the courts are fair enough. Let me run over there. I've seen several African countries where someone is at such an issue of urgency, but the courts can't see it. Yeah. They'll tell you the issue is pending, the judges, and all sorts of excuses. I'm glad that the people I'm seated with are all lawyers, and I would love that as the future calls upon, may we set a fair system where we can respond to matters with the utmost urgency needed. Just look at the issue of Rigathi, Gachagua. Already the different teams of judges have been put in place to try to execute that. Cases like, for example, here that would have been a case that would have been had next year, and yet the money has to be executed on Wednesday. So can our law systems respond to the people's quest for justice with the utmost urgency? That will be the first one. The second point that I would also love to take is that,
and as you make that point, could you, because I've had opinions say that apparently Rigathi's role in the Mamdamo, in the riots that happened, Mandamano, occasion to the finance bill, apparently the intelligence is not very clean on his participation in that particular process. I don't know if you also hold the same opinion.
Yes, I would love to say, yes,
is just mere
there are people who are trying to pin Rigathi in relation to that, but looking at it very, very well, looking at people who were leading the protest at Maandamano, I'm not seeing a sign of people linked to Rigathi. If we are to look at people like this young gentleman was called the Mark Samuel, something like that, a gentleman with the quite a lot of hair.
The guy from the Communist Party?
Yes, from the Communist Party.
Yes.
That gentleman, you know, Kenya, including the young people, are still affected by the tribal tendencies. Majority of the people who came out as faces of Maandamano and all that, I saw many of them not coming from the mountain. So I don't think Rigathi has the plan of supporting people from the lake. That young man is from Luo land. So at the end of the day, I don't see him being a person who will be someone who is feeding from the source of Rigathi. But however, to Gandhi, complete some of my submissions, I would love to say that Uganda and the rest of other African countries, it's time enough for us to learn from our histories and past records. Uganda suffers some of this, though Uganda is like a country with fire, but we put a blanket and walk on top. We know that these things are real, just like my brother said. We still have some of these tribal tensions that are real. I've seen one of the ministers, I believe his name is Mayanja, went somewhere and mentioned statements on land and the tenure systems. But we saw tribesmen not willing to listen to his truth, but they prefer to associate with the Kabaka and move away. And they say, who are you to even pronounce the Kabaka using your own tongue? Who do you think you are? So we shall not listen to the truth, but we shall go back to our tribal leadership, because whatever it is, we want that. Can we believe that we are independent and we have no way out but to create a nation for ourselves? For long, we have failed. What Uganda needs, or what most of the African countries need, we need a national dialogue. And we need a committee that will help Ugandans discuss the truth. Let's talk about our tribal issues. Let's come out clean, and we give an opportunity for the people of Central to mention out why they are uncomfortable with the people of the North. Let the people of the North mention the truth. Let us dialogue as Ugandans. And after having such a conversation, let's look for a way forward. It's unfortunate that ever since the time Uganda was created by the white men, Ugandans have never gotten an opportunity to dialogue about their countries. All constitutions that have been made, the first constitutions were to favor white men. The independent constitution that was drafted in Lancaster was still to favor certain ambitions of the first government. When the first government learned that they cannot work with it, they threw it away. 1966 constitution was to work with Obote. 1995 constitution, we can see that it was to favor the current government in the system. But where are the Ugandans and their dialogue and the constitution that the people of Uganda have drafted? Have the Ugandans really formed, reached a point where they feel like, we don't want to be tribal, but we want to be Ugandans? When will be that point? I believe that is part of the focus that we should be looking at right now as the young people. Thank you.
Interesting. Our time is fast spent, but I'll give all of us just 90 seconds to make your parting shots. Just look to the camera, beginning with Mata, Praise, and then OO. Your parting shots in 2 minutes. But most importantly is, you know, what lessons that we can pick as a country.
As a country, those that have studied, scholars of political science, there is a huge subject, a topic, comparative politics, that you must borrow and learn from your neighbors, from other countries, That is what can help a country grow. So if Ugandans cannot learn from what has been transpiring in Kenya, from Mzee Moi, up to date, so we should look, we must be so critical if we want a transmogrification of a country, if we want an economic El Dorado. So those that are the onchos and the sachamos, the apparatchik of this country, must focus. And my message will go to those that are the apparatchik of a country, the cabal, that we should organize a country and leave it better than that you received. I always make a reference. The first time I came here, Amanda Gorman, at the inauguration ceremony of Joe Biden, she cited a poem. And the most important line, please leaders, leave us a country better than that you are left with. Good. If you don't focus on that, then you do not have a clear vision of where a country can be. All those that have failed on the same, even when they have done wonders, they have not left countries after them. Libya is not there. I can tell you, Ndugu Chidege, even your children yet born may not see a stable Libya. May not. Ivory Coast under Ufet boy. Up to today, it has the biggest basilica. But the day Bowen died, a country went 70 years where it was. Worse than the time of Corona time. So please, create systems that can nurture into a future that is better. Thank you. And for the viewers, I want to thank you for the time. And as a National Deputy Coordinator, Yellow Youth Movement, National Resistance Movement, I send greetings to my young people, and may God bless you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Okay, so my parting shot is going to be from a book I read while in prison, and it's a book by Danny Dorling, Why Social Inequality Still Persists. And the conversation we had here today pushed me back to that book. And basically what he does in this book is he says that principally injustice can be seen in 5 social evils. Allow me to read from my phone because I don't want to get them wrong. Yeah. And he says, namely, these are the effects of elitism, exclusion, prejudice, greed, and despair. And the underlying each social evil are views which, when propagated, strengthen the harm done. You get. And I want to focus my parting shots on this whole thing of the views that we propagate and how they strengthen the harm that is done in relation to what's happening in Kenya. You get? You see, the conversation here has awakened in me a certain realization that, you see, there's a certain way politics are being done, and now it's being normalized. And sort of we feel that that's what politics are, and that's what politics should look like, and anything outside of that is not politics, or is not close to what politics are. And this has perpetuated a system that has excluded people. A system, like Mata says, that pushes people to the bush. This is what I usually tell people. The things happening in our countries, these are the things that push people to the bush. These are the things that create terrorists at the end of the day. Because when you look at the issue in Kenya, it's all about elitism. You get exclusion, this tribe being better than the other tribe, the prejudice that, you know, we cannot have politics in this country unless it's drawn along tribal lines, empowering that. And each other day, we build a certain propaganda that entrenches that kind of belief, that entrenches that kind of view. And that's why social inequality still continues to persist. That's why we see that there's exclusion of the day-to-day person from certain topics like politics, and yet politics affect this person the most at the end of the day. And I'm going to summarize with trying to draw an analogy of tribal issues. You know, we usually say that you wish your tribe the best because you belong to that tribe, and it cannot be any other way. But that's not true. That's not true. If all tribes in this country or in any other country had equal access to resources, if all tribes in a country knew that it's on their meritocracy that they will be judged to join a certain system, not because of their language they speak, not because of their ethnicity, then they would relate better with each other. But because each tribe is trying to struggle so hard to be above the other tribe, and systems make it worse by empowering and entrenching these resources within certain systems, then the issue becomes, how do I protect my own? How do I protect my own kin, you get? And that whole thing does away with meritocracy. So in the politics of it all, of whatever is happening to Kenya, I'll conclude by saying, as citizens, as people that do not sit in the hall of mirrors, as people that do not partake in these, secrecy oaths, what part are you going to play? And each and every day, remember that it's your interest you're meant to protect, and not the interests of those that have built a system for so long that they want us to believe it's the only way.
Wow, interesting.
Well, mine will be a message to all of us, the black people. We should accept that we are black and we are Africans. No one will build a better Africa except to us. That will be the first thing. The Jews accepted, and whether they're in America, they work for Israel. The Indians accepted, and whether they are in a foreign world, they work for India. Who is working for Africa is a question. So mine is that we can say whatever we say, but if we don't take a move to accept that Africa needs a new energy that has a better way of thinking, that goes beyond the tribal lines, but looks at African people as a whole, we shall be doomed unless we start rising above the way our fathers, our founding fathers thought, rising beyond our communities and looking at us as a whole. The only thing that beats tribalism is understanding that we are African, and Africa is greater than our tribe. That will be the message that I will be able to leave. Lose no hope. It's our responsibility as the young people to build a better continent for all of us. Thank you.
Wow, I can never thank all of you enough. Thank you, Ndugumata, for your time.
You're welcome.
From the Yellow Youth Movement. Thank you, our activist and a strong proponent of Article 29 demonstrations. Praise. And of course, the man from Toro. It's always a pleasure having you. Very strong opinions right there.
Thank you.
My last words are the words of Michelle Obama in her book Becoming, where she says that grit, above all things, shall overcome, all these sentimental issues. That for as long as you're good at what you're doing, just keep on doing that. Eventually, that grit will overcome the racial discrimination. It will overcome all those parochial tendencies. So just continue doing good. Every young Ugandan out there, every young Kenyan, every young African, just continue doing good and being the best at what you do. Until next week, same time, same place.